Okay, thank you, Megan. Welcome everyone to the billing schedule setup in Workday. This is the second training in the series of our training curriculum for our Workday training. And it's good to see some of you. I am Lori Curley. I am the manager, one of the managers of Fiscal Services. I'm also joined by Nick Sellers, who is the assistant manager in Fiscal Services. I will be leading you through the PowerPoint presentation today, and Nick will be doing some of the demos for each section and providing you with additional information. We also have Bob Shear as our facilitator today. He will be taking attendance, hopefully tracking our time, and monitoring the chat if you do have any questions. We do want you to ask questions, but we do need to review the materials and keep the questions to probably saved more towards the end of today's session. Workday is very new to all of us, and we will do our best to provide answers to the questions. Be assured that if we don't have an answer to your questions, we will put it in a parking lot to review at a later time and get back to you. Today's session is meant to be an overview demo of Workday within the billing schedule setup. Please be patient with yourself as you begin the learning process, and be patient with us as we demo. We're still learning too. We're learning Workday, and obviously we're all learning Zoom a little more. So I feel like that's our motto for 2020. So we will get started. Our agenda today, basically with the conversion to Workday, we will see some changes in our current processing. One of them is shifting the billing setup to our fiscal services staff. Today's session, you will learn how the billing schedule will be set up in Workday. So we will begin by reviewing a high level of the process and where we are in the process. We will review some key fields on the award setup that you would have covered in your first session. And these are very important for us when we are creating the bill schedule, and therefore we'll do a quick demo of those important records. During the billing schedule setup, we will also need to select the invoice that will go to the sponsor. So we will do a quick review of the options of our invoices available in Workday. And then we will move to Workday to actually give you a view of how we will set up a billing schedule for a transaction type billing and installment type billing. And we'll also give you those some more on those definitions with those two types. So the course objectives today for today's session will be to view a demo of the process used to create the billing schedule for those two different types. We will highlight some of those important fields that and kind of show you when they are different for the different types of the billing, because it will have an impact on the invoice that is created for the sponsor. We will also talk about that downstream impact of the billing setup and what that means to the information that goes into Workday. Because SPOS will not have that security to set up this information in Workday. So Fiscal will be setting up the bill schedule based off the information entered in the award. So our sequence of the courses, as I set up, as I mentioned earlier, we are in the second session of the courses that we are all learning to do. This slide demonstrates the 5 courses in the awards and grants curriculum training. Everyone should have attended a session on creating awards. For today's course, we are going to walk through the process of setting up the billing schedule. and we will definitely reference the information in the Create Awards process in Workday. After completing all 5 of these sessions, we will have an opportunity to do more a deeper dive into some of these scenarios where we'll do lab time and we can practice on awards and ask specific questions about those maybe more advanced scenarios. And the training sessions will last through the middle of December. So the labs are intended to kind of start during this time frame, and then what we ask of you guys is just think of those different types of scenarios that we would like to cover. Our time together on this is limited, and we do want to make the most of our Zoom time together. So this is just going to say just during this session and the additional training sessions, please be attentive and participate actively. Remove distractions, such as cell phones if you can put it on silent if you are able. Turn on your video, which I know a lot of you have already, if your internet bandwidth allows. Ask the questions throughout, and you can do this by accessing the chat window. Bob will be monitoring that. Share ideas and feedback for us. We also ask that when you are not speaking, please mute your mic to avoid disrupting the person speaking. So we will get started here. So we are going to kind of start off with a high-level review of the award creation process. From the time the SPO begins to set up the award in Workday to the time it reaches Fiscal Services to create the billing schedule. This slide actually shows us exactly where we are in the process. The red filled box and the star indicates that the billing lead has now been notified to set up the billing schedule. The 2 preceding boxes obviously are, to this point, is when the SPO has entered the setup information for the award. They have entered the plan, which essentially is the budget. It has been sent to the SPO manager for approval on the award. So at this point, that information is all imperative for the information that we will need in Fiscal Services to set up the billing schedule. And it's important to make sure we have the accurate information so we can do billing reporting. And at this point, where we start our training is when a billing team lead is notified via an action item in their inbox within Workday that a billing schedule is set up. And this will be shown in the demonstration. And this is a slight change from our current process, is that in Workday, Fiscal will be setting up the bill schedule, unlike in PeopleSoft where the SPOs were setting up the bill plan. Fiscal will now have more input and control over the billing schedule setup, although we definitely are going to rely on the SPO information as that will provide us with the necessary information on billing. And there are 2 types of billing in Workday. The first one is transaction billing, which will be our most used type. And this is a true cost reimbursable type of billing. And it's actually when we are billing on expenses that have posted to the grant. The other type is installment billing, formerly called scheduled or prepaid billing, the way we worked it in PeopleSoft. As part of the process to create an award, there are important key fields that the SPO enters that are very important to us to review when setting up the billing schedule. These key fields are very important so that we can have that information correct and accurate for our sponsor. And as you know, the data entered is important to make sure we bill the sponsor correctly. So at this point, the purpose of this section is to demonstrate how this data flows within Workday screens and to reinforce how the information included in the award setup used to create the bill schedule and how the data is used for invoice creation to bill on a grant. The SPOs have analyzed the contract and translated the information into the fields within Workday, and it is important to get that information accurate. Reviewing these fields in the test environment, Tenet also provides us and you with the opportunity to continue becoming familiar with where information is located on the award. There are plans started for SPOs to provide information within award setup process, indicating any special instructions or requirements around the billing setup for each award or award line. Information in these fields listed on the slide will help with setting up the bill schedule. And types of billing in Workday, as we mentioned, are the transaction and installment process. And when reviewing the award record, it is important to check the billing notes to confirm what type of bill schedule should be set up. The communication is definitely important to the success of the billing process, as it always has been. The process to set up the billing schedule, whether it is for transaction and installment, is very similar. At the beginning of the setup, there are some few minor differences depending on the installment types. But we will see the setup difference when we get into the Workday labs, and when we are more knowledgeable about the basic process. At this point, I'm going to pass it over to Nick to demo the process of reviewing an award record for information we will need to check before setting up a bill schedule.
Thank you, Lori. Can everyone see my screen now? Look okay? Okay.
Yes.
So basically, to say what Lori was, or to piggyback off what Lori was talking about, we want to take a quick look at the award record. Once a SPO manager has approved an award, once a SPO manager has approved an award, it will route to a billing lead. And so they'll have an action item in their inbox that they need to review to set up a billing schedule. So let's go ahead and show that now. I'm going into my inbox and I have an award here that needs a billing schedule set up. So what I'll do is go into the award first so that we can review our information. So we start off here in the summary page, and this just gives a quick summary of the information that's been input by the SPO as far as name, an award number, start and end dates, that kind of information. If we move along here to the sponsor tab, it gives who the sponsor is, our bill to. If it's a letter of credit, it gives the letter of credit ID, doc ID, that information. Funding details, just like it sounds, it gives a breakdown on the funding as far as direct and F&A and the total, and then if there's any cost share or not. Let's see, special conditions here. This will list if there's any special conditions included, as well as an important one, it'll say residual funds disposition. In this case, it's a cost reimbursable award, so we know that if there's any funding left over at the end, it would be returned to the sponsor. Notes is where we would put in, billing notes is where we put in if there was any sort of instructions as far as billing goes. And this one's an LOC, so it simply says that. But if we had an installment billing, it would tell us the schedule, or might have some other information there. Let's see here. Moving along to award tasks. This just gives award tasks due within 90 days. And then this would give all the award tasks. And this would give if there's any that are within 90 days or overdue. Excuse me. The billing and receivables tab, this gives some basic billing information. We go over to this next one. There's not going to be anything there because we haven't started billing yet, so we don't have any invoices. But let's see here. Award prepayment summary, there's no data there at this point either because we haven't set up anything. And additional reports, gives some information as far as grant roles, who the billing specialist is. That would be me in this case, the lead, the manager, and then some other grants operation information. So that's pretty much it for this part. So Laura, if you want to go ahead and take over from here, get back into the slideshow.
Can you see my screen now? Yes. Okay, thank you, Nick, for reviewing the award record for us and highlighting the important fields we'll need for our next steps. We definitely appreciate the accuracy of that information, and it's all good to be on the same page when we set up these awards. We will now review the invoice format types available for us to select in Workday. When setting up the bill schedule, Fiscal will need to select an invoice type. These invoice types are similar to the ones we use today in PeopleSoft. Although the invoice type is not a required field in Workday, we must enter a value. So leaving the field blank means the invoice PDF cannot be generated. And this could be a problem if we need to send an invoice to the sponsor. This invoice type selected will apply to the invoices generated in batch or ad hoc processing, as well for utilization invoices. The utilization is during installment billing. Most invoices will be generated in batch, and the invoice type selected during that setup will be the type printed when the batch process runs. And that will all be part of our next training session. There are several types of invoices, so we will review them quickly. Note that the prefix of our invoices all begin with OSP, and it is used for all of our invoice types. And this is due because in Workday you will see other types of invoices available because we're sharing we're sharing Workday with the rest of the university. So the different types that we have and that you will see are similar to the PeopleSoft types. The first one is OSP fixed amount, and that's pretty much used with prepaid installment billing. OSP no print is used obviously when the sponsor doesn't need an invoice or we don't need to send one. Typically we use it with LOCs, but there may be some other circumstances that where an invoice does not need to be printed, and we'll go ahead and use that type. OSP special handling is used when additional backup, such as a PI portal screen, or the distribution of the invoice is needed maybe to a couple of different addresses at the sponsor. OSP required form is used when the sponsor has requested a specific form be used for the invoice, and we do have quite a few of those. The OSP standard is used when no special processing request is involved and the invoice can be generated and sent with minimal staff review, or it's the old RF invoice form, so it's probably the most popular one that we use. There's also an option for each of the above invoice types, with the exception of the no print, to include cost share. At this time, the cost share invoice will be on a separate page with the cost share data as it is in PeopleSoft. So there's no additional checkbox to select. We would just need to select the type of invoice with that cost share behind it, and that would flag the account for the additional cost share information. So that's a good change. Now it's time to review the different types of bill schedule setups. Transaction and installment billing are the two types. We're going to review them one at a time. And Nick will start the demo with the transaction type billing schedule, which will be used for cost reimbursable awards, with those also for letter of credits. And that's when we are actually billing on the expenses posted to the grant. And then he will cover an installment type bill schedule, which is used to bill the scheduled invoices to sponsors. Are you ready, Nick?
Yes, thank you, Lori. Okay, so in order to set up a billing schedule, we'll come here to, again, to my inbox, and we're going to start with a transaction-based billing or a transaction-based billing schedule. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and go in through my, like I said, through my inbox, pick up the action item. It would be tempting to go ahead and click this button here that says create billing schedule for award. But if you do that, it actually takes you to a screen where you have to fill in some information that would already be auto-populated if you go a different route. So rather than doing that, we're going to want to go up here to the action, or I'm sorry, we're going to want to go, yeah, to the action item. Click on that. I'm sorry, wrong one. This one down here. Go into the action item on the award info, and then go to award, and down here to create billing schedule. So we'll go ahead and click on that. Up here at the top, so this is information that if we click that button in the action item that we would have had to fill in, but since we didn't, it auto-populates in. So we have company, bill to, sponsor, currency. Obviously, this is always going to be Ohio State, and then this is a US DHHS award. Currency should always be USD, and then it gives the award information. And then down here at create new billing schedule, this is where we want to put in whether it's transaction or installment. Transaction is the default, and in this case, we are looking at a transaction award, so we don't need to make any changes. This billing schedule template for award is a field that we can go ahead and leave blank. So once we've made sure that we have the correct type of billing schedule, which we already do, we'll go down here and click on OK. That'll send us to our next screen. And depending on whether we pick transaction or installment, this next screen will look a little bit different because there's a little bit of different information, different fields that might show up from one to the other. So we have some information that already pre-populated in that was on that last screen. We have a bill to address. This will pop up with the default address. If you need to make a change, you can click on this and go to bill to addresses. And it looks like in this case, this is the only one that we have. So we'll just go ahead and leave that. Bill to contact is always going to list out all the bill to contacts for a specific bill to sponsor. So we'll just go ahead and X out the ones we don't need. And just for the sake of this demonstration, we'll leave the first one here listed. Billing type, again, is transaction. That's a grayed out field here since it was already in the last screen. Billing cycle, we are going to want to do, since this is an LOC award, we want to do LOC. There are several options similar to what we have in PeopleSoft with annuals, bi-monthlies, month-end, quarterlies, what have you. But in this case, we just want to go ahead and do LOC. Schedule type, actually in this case being a transaction, we can ignore that field. We don't need to worry about it. Schedule description is a field that is currently being used for conversion purposes. So again, it's not one that we need to worry about with our billing schedule setup. We go this right here, schedule on hold. That is similar to what we have in PeopleSoft right now with a bill plan hold. So if there was some sort of issue along the way where we needed to stop billing, we could go ahead and click on that button there. But since we're just now activating it, we're going to go ahead and leave that unchecked. Auto submit invoices for approval. That just means that once our invoices generate, they'll be approved invoices. So we definitely want to go ahead and leave that checked as well. The billing limit, we are going to want to have that as the total budget. So in this case, the budget is $169,650. So we're going to want to go ahead and put that in. Oops. There we go. So that'll be our bill limit. It ties out to our total budget. Up here at the top, invoice header defaults. The payment terms defaults to immediate, but we actually want to change that to net 30. And we're going to do that for all of our awards. And that's, even though we're changing it to that, it will still, our invoices will still say due upon receipt, but this is more for the purposes of when we're running collections and aging reports. That's why we're doing that. So it's purely an internal feature that we're setting those at, but we do want all of our awards to be set at net 30 when we're setting up the billing schedule. The payment type, in this case, it's a letter of credit award, so we want to pick letter of credit. If it weren't letter of credit, every other one we're doing check as the default here. So if it's not letter of credit award, we would pick check. In this case, it is a letter of credit, so we'll go ahead and leave that. The PO number, if we did have a PO number associated with this award, we could go ahead and put it in here. It's also something where if we got a PO along the way after the award had been activated, we could do an amendment to add that, or we could do an edit our billing schedule to add that. But in this case, we don't have one, so we're going to leave that field blank. Invoice type, as Lori had mentioned during her slideshow presentation, that we want to pick ones with the with OSP at the beginning. There are other ones on here because of billing that's done elsewhere on campus, but for ours, we definitely want to use one that starts OSP. And with this being a letter of credit, we actually don't need anything to print out because we're not sending invoices, we're doing draws. So we want to go ahead and pick OSP no print. Invoice memo, that's a field that can be left blank. I believe that's another one that's being used for conversion purposes at this point. So once we've done all that, we want to come down here to add our lines. In this case, there could be multiple lines, and we can add them, or I mean, we could add multiple lines or just add one, whatever it calls for. In this case, we're looking at a pretty plain vanilla kind of an example here. So we only have one award line, so we're going to go ahead and add that one award line. So once everything has been entered up above, we want to go ahead and click on this Save and Continue button down here. And this will take us to basically it's a recap of what we just went through. All the information is basically uneditable at this point because this is just a review page. But if we didn't find something that we put in incorrect, if we had a bill to contact that was wrong or something that we needed to fix, we could click on this button here called Edit Schedule Header. And that will send us back to basically a similar screen to where we were just at, where we could fix some of those things if need be. We don't need to fix anything, so we're going to go ahead and click OK to send us back to the screen that we just were at. Okay, so the next one is Edit Retention Terms. This is not a field, anything that we're using at OSU, so you can go ahead and ignore that. Manage lines would be if we needed to add or subtract a line to the billing schedule. So we would click on that, and right here, there's nothing to add because there was only one line on this one to start with, but if there were other lines available, those would be listed here. Remove line, there's the one line that we already added, so that's down here. If we needed to remove it or remove any lines from it, we could do that here. Since we're not doing anything like that, we're going to go ahead and click on OK. And, let's see here, manage attachments. That would be if we needed to add any sort of attachments, that's where we'd go in to do that. And so everything looks good on this one. So what we'll do is go ahead and click on this submit button right here. And it's asking us to click OK. We go ahead and do that. And then we get our green check mark right here. And even though we had that, we are not quite done yet. What we need to do from this point is go back into our action item right here. And since if we had done it through this button, we would have had to fill out more information, but this part would be done. But since we didn't do it through that, we have to come back to our action item and then click submit down here. And it will say, once it's finished thinking, it will say you have marked as complete. So we are all set with this billing schedule. Click done down there at the bottom. And then if we do a refresh, it goes away. So it's all gone now. So that is basically the transaction billing schedule in a nutshell. And what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and jump right into our installment billing. So we have an example right here. As with the previous example, we do not want to click this button because it'll require us to add in more information than We need to, since that information is already there. So instead, we will go ahead to the award action item. We'll click on this, and then we'll go to the first one, awards. Go down here to create billing schedule. And this is the same screen that we saw on our transaction one, where we have company, bill to, currency, and award, and then this create new billing schedule. But again, it defaults to transactions. And so in this case, we are going to need to change that to installment. And again, billing schedule template for awards, similar to our last example, we can go ahead and leave that blank. So we click on OK. Okay. So there's a few more fields here than we had the last time around. What we'll go ahead and do, though, is verify on the ones that we verify the information is correct and everything. So company, bill to, sponsor, those are defaulted in from the last page. Bill to address, we go down here, go to bill to addresses. In this case, we do have multiples, but we're going to go ahead and leave it with this one for the purposes of this demo. So we'll just leave that as is. Again, we have multiple bill to contacts because all the bill to contacts pop in. So we want to go ahead and get rid of the ones that we're not using, and we'll just use this first one as our example here. Billing type is installment. So the cycle we are going to use, this is basic. Oops, I scrolled down a little too far. This is basically a billing cycle of how we want utilization done. So we want utilization to occur on these ones anytime we run our monthly billing batch. So we're going to go ahead and put in month end right here. Okay. Currency and award, those default from the previous page. Schedule type, this is one we are going to use now. On our transaction example, we left this blank, but now we're going to go ahead and use this. So we click on the drop-down menu here, and we want to use prepaid. And the purposes of that is to so that we have revenue recognition. Once we pick that, that's what will occur. Let's see, schedule description is, again, this is a field that we're going to leave blank because that is a field that's being used for conversion purposes. Milestone is a blank field. There's nothing to put in there, so we leave that blank as well. Schedule on hold is similar to the last one. That's like a billing hold. So since we're activating this now, we don't want to do that. And again, this auto submit invoices for approval. It's the same thing that we saw with transaction, where it basically makes sure that the invoices generated are already approved. So we don't want to touch that one either. Enable consumption of prepaid balance. So this will allow for utilization whether we've received the payments or not. Basically allows expenses as they post to utilize. So we definitely want to leave that button checked. Do not bill over line installment. It defaults to not being checked, but generally speaking, we're going to want that checked because that prevents any billing above and above what our installment total is and above what we've set up prepaids for. So we definitely want to go ahead and have that checked as well. Okay, so we'll go back up here. Invoice header defaults. Again, payment terms. We want to switch that from the default of immediate to, let's see here, we want to go down to net 30. So we have that. Payment type, again, this is a non-LOC, and our only option, or there's several options listed, but the only two that we're using are letter of credit for LOCs and check for everything else. So we want to put in check right there. PO number, if we had one, we would fill that in right here. We don't have one for this demo, so we're going to leave that field blank. Invoice type, generally speaking on these, and again, we want to use one that starts with OSP. And generally speaking, on these types of installment billing, we would probably want to use either fixed amount or no print. We're going to go ahead and do fixed amount for the purposes of this demo. Invoice memo is another field that can be left blank, so you can go ahead and not worry about that one. Okay, so the next one over here is generate installment information, and there are 3 different ways. We're going to just do one for the purposes of this demo, but there is, when you're doing an installment, you can either do it custom, which would mean you set it up however you would like it. Defined installment, there might be different amounts for the first and last and the ones in between, so you define what those are. And then spread even is just like it sounds, you spread it even over the course of the award. So if we had an award that was $12,000 and we were billing it over a full year, we would do $1,000 a month, basically. For the purposes of this, though, we're going to do a custom. And when we choose custom, we can go ahead and do none of the above on both of these two fields. We don't need to fill in anything for this just now, since we're going to be customizing our invoicing. So we've filled out everything up here. Again, this is a pretty simple example. So we're going to go ahead with just one award line. So we're going to go ahead and check the one line that we do have. And since everything here is filled out, we want to click on Save and Continue. Send this to our next page here, where we have a summary of information we just entered. And we have essentially a few different, but a lot of the same types of tabs that we had on our transaction one. We have Edit Schedule Header, which if we needed to make any changes, if we saw anything up here that was an error, if we got a PO number after the fact that we wanted to add, we'd go ahead and click on this Edit Schedule Header, and it would allow us would allow those fields to be reopened so that we could edit some information as needed. Edit retention terms is, again, one that we're not using at OSU, so you can go ahead and just ignore that. Manage lines is the same thing we looked at before, where you can add and subtract lines off of the billing schedule if needed. And then manage attachments, again, as if we needed to add or take away any documents out there for sort of billing purposes. And in the case of this one, we did a custom billing. So we want to click on this button right here that says Customize Installments. Okay, so what we want to do now, and I should have had this open before, we can right click up here to duplicate. Yep, that's the one we want, because we wanted an extra tab. I meant to do this at the beginning of the demo for this, because it's nice to have an extra tab open with your award information. So that way, if you need to kind of click back and forth, you can do so. Let's see, where am I at here? Okay, so the award. Okay, there we go. And since we're doing a custom one, we want to look out here at the Notes tab, because that's essentially the same as our contract notes from PeopleSoft, and it should tell us what we're doing as far as the billing goes. It does. It says invoice sponsor for entire amount of $622,008 upon this award being made active. So now that we know that, we can go ahead down here and add our installment billing. The invoice date is the date that you're creating this, basically. So we're going to go ahead and use today's. The from and to, it's kind of an optional field. It just depends on if we need to put in any sort of a date range. For the purposes of this, let's go ahead and just put in the 1st through the 30th of last month. And so once we've done that, we click on this addition sign right here as well. And we want to click on our line, and it'll give us our award number. So we want to go ahead and add that. These from and to dates can be left blank. They would pick up, our invoice will pick up these ones. So these are fields that we don't need to worry about. And again, we are doing, since we looked out here, we're doing the full amount in one bill. So we're going to go ahead and put that in our amount column, or our amount field right here. There we go. Oh, I left a digit off at the end, so 622008. And if we tried to do for more, we would get an error message. So it does keep you from billing more than what the line is for. So we've done that. So we want to go ahead then and save our custom schedule. Now that we've entered everything, we come down here. We can make sure that what we've entered is what we want. We put in our invoice date. It has the due date of 30 days out because of the net 30 that we did, and that's, again, just for internal purposes. Has our from and to dates here, our total amount, our award, and the amount right over here. So this all looks okay. So what we want to do now is click submit. So we're going to go ahead and submit that. And then we'll click OK to continue. We get that green check mark that we like to see. So now we'll go back to our inbox, because again, we have one more small step we got to do before we can, before this one's completed. So we go back into our inbox, our action item, and then we click submit down here. And it takes a second, and it should be, yep, mark complete. Go ahead and click done. And then if you do a refresh, we can see that that award is now gone. So that was our demo as far as setting up both transaction and installment billing schedules. Do we have, I hadn't been keeping an eye on the chat. Bob, do you know, do we have any questions in there that we need to address at this point?
No questions in the chat.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to bring up now, if you didn't already obviously type them out or anything? Anyone have any questions on what we just went over?
I have a quick question regarding the PO number. Is that something that the SPOs know when we're setting up the award? Would we put that in the internal notes?
That's a good question. That would be a good place for it. You could also, if you had like a document with the PO, you could also attach that in there as well. But yeah, anywhere where, and actually if you get it after the fact, then that's a situation where you probably would want to email the billing specialist to let them know so we can update it. Because I don't think to my knowledge, I don't think there's a mechanism that would, if you tried to add that after, that would ding us as far as letting us know to go back and add that. But if you do have that information from the get-go, yes, notes would be good, or adding in an attachment with the PO would be helpful as well.
And actually, I just wanted to add here that Bob and I will be working with Carrie Ewell on having communication between OGC and Fiscal Services to provide specific information like PO. Obviously, you know, award information, the contract information will be able to be uploaded directly into Workday. But that might be another example of either putting it on the notes or uploading it directly in the system. But then there will be more information about that communication later on.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you, Carrie, for your question.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any at this point?
We do have some in the chat.
Okay.
It looks
A
like
couple have come in, yes.
Yeah.
So from Jeanette, I have a question regarding invoice templates. Do you want us to upload the templates in attachments?
I think that's a good idea.
That would be a good
Definitely.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think today you guys either upload it to the portal or send it directly to the billing specialist, but it would be good to have that invoice template directly in Workday, especially if that billing specialist is out of the office or something. We could go directly to Workday and find out that sponsor form or whatever information we need to provide to the sponsor.
Yeah, or websites that we would use, that sort of thing is important.
Yeah.
And then Josh asks if any file types are restricted. That we don't know. We imagine most of the documents being uploaded will be PDFs or Word or Excel, but we don't know if there are any restrictions on those. We can put that in the parking lot and get back to everyone and let them know if there's anything that we can't upload into Workday.
Right.
Yeah, we definitely will be having more of these types of discussions. So these are all very good questions. I know that we haven't thought about everything, so that's the reason why we're going to do some labs and you know, identify additional information.
Yeah, as we all get in and practice and start working with the functionality in Workday, we'll learn what restrictions there are.
Do we have any others, or let's see. That looks like it's it as far as the chat goes. Any other questions anyone has at this point, or are we all pros now? Ready to?
I think we are all pros on the basic information.
Great job, you guys. Definitely are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I suppose if there's no other questions at this point, the last thing that we'd want to mention is that we will take, or we have taken attendance for the roster today. And once the course is marked complete on your Buckeye Learn transcript, you'll get an evaluation email to you. We do encourage you to fill those out and give any feedback that you do have on today's session. And I think that's about all we have. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, and if you have questions later on, feel free to contact any
Yes.
one of us, any
Definitely.
one of the trainers. And we can either get you an answer right away or ask ourselves what the answer is.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.